Okay, hello everybody, and welcome once again to my personal blog, Total Mind Fitness. It's great to be back here with episode 2. Hopefully we'll have some interesting things to discuss. Just to remind you, this blog is about bringing awareness to Total Mind Fitness. In other words, bringing a little bit of nutrition to the way that we think, bringing some information regarding physical exercise. Maybe we'll also bring some scientific-based evidence, methods on mindful living, and just basically having a conversation about taking notice and being aware of our lives and trying to bring it into some sort of manageable way, because there's many things that go on, many things that can overwhelm us, and many things that are just happening in our busy lives these days, whether it's our children, whether it's our parents, whether it's our work, whether it's our partnerships, whether it's our business, whether it's our place of employment, whether it's not having a place of employment, whether it's financial things, having enough month at the end of our money, as they say. So there's plenty things going on in our lives that we need to manage it at the end of the day. Otherwise, we'll feel that we don't have enough resources, and that feeling of being overwhelmed will come over us. And if we add to that our natural human condition of having all sorts of different types of thoughts coming in, then it can be sometimes, in some cases, quite frightening. Okay, now, in order to get our housekeeping under order, I'm just hoping that you can hear me and things like that. So if there's anybody here that's online and can hear me, if they could just put in the comments, you can hear me or give me a few hearts or thumbs up, then I'll know that technically we're on and everything is okay. So let me just check from my point of view. Oh, if you only knew the anxiety that I go through before I actually, run this live, just to know if it's actually working. So if there's anybody on out there that can just tell me that, give me a comment there that you can actually hear me, then that would be wonderful. Give me a thumbs up or a heart or something. Anyway, so carrying on, basically what we're going to be talking about in today's blog is the rhythm of life, and what that actually what that means to us. So the rhythm of life. Now, I owe you a couple of things from the first episode, a couple of technical errors, and we had a couple of videos from Russ Harris that kind of got mixed up, one and the other. So I'd like at the end maybe to show you these. One is a beautiful perspective using a chessboard as a metaphor. So there's a rhythm to life, and it seems, a kind of a to and fro alternating current, a pulsating rhythm, and it's reflected also in our electrically induced heartbeat and the constant movement of our eyes, which without we wouldn't see. We need this kind of always fluttering. It seems that without change we wouldn't function and we wouldn't live. In fact, even when we sleep, we come in and out of different types of sleep and different depths of sleep. So we are constantly changing. So too, we only pay attention to change. It is as if monotony is contrary to our actual survival. And if you listen, scientists constantly are telling us that we are the descendants of the cowards, the ones most sensitive to change. Any slight change in the environment, and our ancestors immediately interpreted it as life-threatening, and so ran away to live another day. Who knows how real those life-threatening moments actually were? But according to researchers, it was vital for our survival. So it seems survival of the fittest is not what we may have considered to be intuitively the hardest, the strongest, the cleverest of the bunch, but rather the more sensitive, careful, and adaptable one. The one being a little bit cautious about possible danger and adapting behavior in the most advantageous way to ensure continuous survival. No one ever mentions, though, who was the happier, the short-lived carefree ancestors or the neurotic but longer-lived ones. In any event, it is us of today that reap our genes from that big, over-anxious gene pool, which proved to be quite useful in the big picture. Yet these same qualities are frowned upon and ridiculed in our day and age. In fact, we label those folks anxious, oversensitive, and in some cases suffering from disorders. Of course, it cannot be denied that there are, unfortunately, some of us that have not adapted well and are so stuck or fused in their psyche that it causes them to be dysfunctional. And this condition needs to be attended to as quickly as possible in order to offer the best possibility of recovery. And to paraphrase Matthew D. Lieberman's words in his book Social, which I thoroughly recommend, it seems that suffering is the price we all pay for the rewards of being human. So I'd just like to take that idea of suffering, because if you just go out and ask the man or woman in the street, it tends to be that they have this sensation, this feeling, this realization that there's a lot of suffering going on. I'd just like to, open that, unpack a little bit, and understand, what it actually is, this suffering. Well, maybe there's two types of suffering. Maybe there's a kind of a clean pain and a dirty suffering pain. Maybe the clean pain are the things that just happen as things that we value. So if we value our children, we are going to go hand in hand with that, the worrying about them, the concern about them, the pain over their hurt. If we're have value of other things, of our work, of our art, of anything that is of value to us, together, hand in hand with that, goes the pain of losing that value, goes the pain of keeping up that value, the effort involved with it, the constant change that we need to go through in order to keep that value in our lives. So if we call that kind of pain a more valued pain, if you like, a clean pain, and we say that both sides of the coin have to be there, so we have what we value and the worry about our value, we have what we value, the importance and the pain that goes with our values. And that is just part of being human. A lot of the times that pain feels extremely uncomfortable, and that we will do things in order to avoid that pain. In other words, maybe we have concerns about keeping our family, finances, health, our children, our parents, ourselves. And instead of dealing with that directly, we avoid it. And we have behaviors that we have developed and learnt over time that help us avoid these very important values and the pain that goes with it. And that avoidance in itself will create a second layer of pain, a second layer of suffering, a more dirty type of pain. And that pain is usually caused by the avoidance of things that we value and actually dealing directly with them. So when we get a little bit anxious about something of value or something of importance to us, instead of dealing with it directly, and we begin to avoid it and maybe go out for a cigarette or have a drink, stay at work a little bit more just to take our mind off things. Maybe we will use sports to avoid lingering on that uncomfortable anxiety that is attached to things of importance to us. And it works in the short term. But after a while, when we come down from that ecstasy of avoidance, we realize that we haven't actually dealt with the things that are important to us, things of value, our family, our children, our friends. And all these avoidant behaviors have actually taken us away from the things that we value rather than bring us towards them. And that in itself causes its own suffering. That in itself causes us feelings of guilt, feelings of shame, and feelings of void from not having these things of importance in our lives fully. So maybe, yes, there is a certain amount of suffering and change and pain that goes with being human. But maybe there's a lot of suffering that we don't need in our lives, and that we can actually learn to manage that and learn to reduce that dirty pain and dirty suffering. And one of the ways that we can do that is by accepting that with things of value come difficulty. Not always, but if it's really important to us, then it will be really important to us not to lose it. And that creates tension. And if we understand that, and we accept that, and we live and have valued action even though we feel uncomfortable, then at the end of the day we'll have that sense of fulfillment. Because as I mentioned at the beginning of our talk, life seems to be full of change. Even our heart beats in the rhythm. Even our sleep, we're in the rhythm. And so that rhythm of up and down, that rhythm of on and off, seems to be part of just life. So I'm interested in your comments. I'm interested in your take on it. This is just my personal view mixed in with what I've learned from my mentors. My mentors come from acceptance and commitment therapy and acceptance and commitment training, mindfulness, CBT, dealing with psychotrauma, understanding human behavior from a behavioral point of view. Things that we learn to do that become automatic. And a lot of the things that we do that cause us pain and suffering are past programming, if you like, things that we've learnt and maybe not updated it according to the context, according to the situation that we find ourselves presently. And that's worth noticing and taking into consideration also. Now, as I mentioned, I've got a couple of videos coming up that I want to show you. Two of them from Russ Harris, actually, in episode 1, but there was a little bit of a technical error, so I'll bring them in now because I think it's really important that we learn this kind of perspective and be able to shut off that struggle that we tend to have on a daily basis. And it's that struggle that brings in this dirty pain, brings in this suffering. And I think this is something that we really can do without. And so I'm going to show you, I'm going to bring that up in a minute. But in the meantime, I just want to let you know that my book, Mind Over Terror, is coming along really nicely, and I really appreciate all the support that I'm getting from you people out there. It really is a difficult thing to go through, writing a book. Not necessarily from the technical point, but from the emotional side, to go through and to recap and to be detailed as much as possible about a live and real event that happened, being the MEN Manchester Arena bombing, and then the London bridge terror attack, Borough Market, and then again the Grenfell Tower fire, in which the charity that I volunteer for came out of the ashes, basically from nothing, and to a fully functioning organization dealing in psychotrauma. And this book that I'm trying to put out is close as possible to the year anniversary of these events. It's about 60% done now, and we're I'm trying to release now and then little teasers, and you can see all that in our Mind Over Terror group on Facebook. So just put in Mind Over Terror and you'll be able to join up and follow what's happening with the progression of that book. So just to give you now a little bit of Russ Harris, here is the struggle switch. So when we find ourselves struggling, this might be a little way of helping us switch it off.
It often seems like we've got a struggle switch at the back of our mind. And as soon as an uncomfortable emotion, a painful feeling or memory shows up, it's like
I'm live on Facebook, so I'll have to speak to you soon.
Start to struggle with it. So let's suppose anxiety shows up. Very common, painful emotion that we all get to experience. Anxiety shows up. The struggle switch goes on. Oh, here's anxiety. I don't like anxiety. I want to get rid of my anxiety. Now I've got anxiety about my anxiety. So it's getting bigger. With the struggle switch on, I now get, oh, my anxiety's getting bigger. How do I get rid of my anxiety? Now I've got even more anxiety. With the struggle switch on, I may then get angry about my anxiety. Why does this anxiety keep showing up? I hate this anxiety. Then I might even start to feel sad about my anger. Oh, is this my life? Oh, and then I may start to feel guilty about my sadness about my anger. Oh, how pathetic am I when there's starving kids in Africa? So with my struggle switch on, my emotions get amplified. I've now got guilt about my sadness, about my anger, about my anxiety, And that kind of amplification of emotions gives them more impact and influence over my life, and often gets me bogged down or pulls me into self-defeating behaviors. Now, what happens if I can switch off the struggle switch? With the struggle switch off, anxiety shows up, and it's not that I like it or want it or approve of it, it's just I'm not going to struggle with it. I'm not going to invest my time, energy, and effort in struggling with this anxiety. Instead, I'm going to invest it in doing meaningful, life-enhancing activities, such as spending quality time with my friends and family, or playing with my kids. Now, with the struggle switch off, the anxiety is free to move. It may get higher, it may get lower, it may move quickly, it may move slowly, but the point is it's free to move. It doesn't get amplified by all of these other emotions which make it kind of bigger and stickier and make it hang around for a lot longer. So there's no such thing as a life without anxiety. It shows up for all of us. But when anxiety shows up and the struggle switch is off, it's so much easier to live with than when the struggle switch is on.
So thanks to my friend Russ Harris way down in Australia for those video. Another one of his coming up in a few minutes. But look, I myself also have this feeling of anxiety sometimes more than just a little bit. And as I said to you, even before doing a Facebook Live, I have this overwhelming feelings of anxiety in my stomach. But the value that I want to put over and to give to you is a valued action that I have to take along that anxiety, that good anxiety, that valued pain, if you like, that I was talking about. It's not the dirty suffering pain which would come if I didn't do this Facebook Live, for instance, and said, you know what, this anxiety is too much for me. I'm not going to do the Facebook Live today. And believe me, these thoughts went through my head. And then what would happen now would be that I wouldn't do the Facebook Live, and I would feel that feeling of loss. I'd feel that feeling that I didn't do something that I feel is important to me, to give some value to the people that are listening to this. So then I would start to feel a bit guilty and maybe shameful that I, last week came out with a Facebook Live saying I've got a new blog, and now I'm not doing my new blog, and so there's this shame that would go with it, this embarrassment that would go with it, the whole thing. I wouldn't want to speak to anybody anymore because they would think I'm some sort of fraud, and these thoughts would start to go through my head, and so on and so forth. But instead, I've learnt, with the help of Russ Harris and others, to turn off that struggle switch. And even though there's a sense of anxiety, if you like, in my body, I still manage to go ahead and do the things that I believe that are important to me. And, hey-ho, sometimes the anxiety stays there through my talking to you, and sometimes I'm just so focused on the value that I want to give you that I don't notice it anymore, even though it might still be there. So really a lot of value coming there from Russ Harris, a very, very important message. Another video that he brought out is about perspective. And this, I think, is extremely important in our lives, because the same detail can happen, but if we have a different perspective on it, then even the same detail, the same context, the same things that are happening can be interpreted by us very differently. And it's worthwhile learning how to change perspective. And one way of doing that is understanding how our thoughts work. Because a lot of the time we get these thoughts coming in telling us not to do things, or telling us to do things that we don't want, or telling us how we're not capable, we're not learned enough, or we're not experienced enough. I don't know, all sorts of thoughts telling us how stupid we are, or how not good enough we are, or whatever it is. And then we'll try to struggle and think of good thoughts and say, oh, you know what, it's not true. I've learned in university, and I've done this, and I've got lots of experience, and I've been doing this for a long time, and we start kind of arguing with ourselves. So maybe there's a different way of looking at it. And I think Russ Harris comes up again with a beautiful way of explaining how we can look at things from a different perspective, and how we can deal with these thoughts coming into our head a little differently. So have a look at this.
Have you ever noticed how easy it is to get pulled into a struggle with your own thoughts and feelings? This is something that we all readily do. It comes naturally to us. We start fighting and struggling with our thoughts and feelings. It's as if we get pulled into this game of chess, where the white pieces are all our positive thoughts and feelings, and the black pieces are all our negative thoughts and feelings. And we get so invested in trying to win this battle. We try to move the white pieces, our positive thoughts and feelings, to dominate the board. And we try to wipe out all the black pieces, get rid of all the negative thoughts and feelings. But there are at least two problems with going through life this way. Firstly, there's an infinite number of white and black pieces. So this battle is never won. It's ongoing forever. The other problem is that white pieces actually attract black pieces. You move the white piece, I'm a good friend, it attracts the black piece, no you're not, what about the time you did that? You move the white piece, I accept myself, it attracts the black piece, no you don't, what about your thighs, what about your stretch marks, what about your pot belly? So what about if we could learn how to be like the board? The board is not involved in the battle. The board is intimate contact with the pieces, it holds the pieces, but it's not fighting. If we can learn to be more like the board, to step back and watch our thoughts and feelings, to make room for them, to let them flow through us, without getting caught up in a fight or a conflict or a struggle, we're in a much better position to create a rich, full and meaningful life. Because we can invest our time and effort and energy in acting on our values, behaving like the person we really want to be, instead of investing it in a futile struggle with our own thoughts and feelings.
Okay, so I think Russ Harris just knocks it on the head there and gives us a new way, a new perspective of managing those thoughts that come into our head. Just to let you know, a colleague of mine, Jane Silver, and I have opened up a course for parents in Manchester and Whitefield in the spirit of the things that you've just seen. And we are willing to open up these courses for anyone who's interested all over the city. We'll even go outside the city if you can get a big enough group. Very important in parenting to understand how our own mind thinks, our own body works. If we want to help our children have a successful life, have a life full of value, then it's very important that we know how to apply that to ourselves first and then, pass it on to our children. So I think that's it for today. If there's any questions, I'm always willing to answer, and if there's any comments that you want to put down after we're off air, then of course I can address them in our next blog. Hopefully we'll have an episode 3. So in the meantime, thank you for watching, and until next time. Have a good night.